Happy Advent, you penitent sinners. I always wanted to say that. So John the Baptist basically says on the riverside with his Advent message. But besides that, hey, it's Advent. I want to talk about this season and how it kind of connects with some really strange realities of our consumerist culture and the idea of waiting as something holy and good. It's all coming up. Here we go. Welcome to the Together for Good podcast, a podcast created by Bethany Lutheran Church in Cherry Hills Village, Colorado, and hosted by me, Pastor Nate Preisinger. On Together for Good, our goal is to provide practical, engaging content that supports you without expectations. Whether you're feeling disconnected from traditional religion or simply exploring what faith means in your life, we're here to walk alongside you. No matter where you are on your journey of faith, we're glad you're here. Welcome to Together for Good. Ah, yes, the season of Advent, my favorite season in the entire church year. It's just so perfectly compact, and there's so many lovely pieces to it in terms of the music, and I will die on this hill. The best hymns in the Lutheran hymnal are Advent hymns. You can fight me on this, but if you really look through, I think you'll come to agree with me. They are incredible and beautiful, and the lyrics are great, and the tunes are even better. And yes, Christmas carols are lovely, but I guarantee you, your favorite songs are Advent hymns, not Christmas carols. Joy to the World, look, it's technically in the Advent section of the hymnal. I don't know why, but I'm taking that one, and I'm taking credit for it in terms of this argument. Anyways, Advent's just this beautiful season, and the real theme of Advent is this idea of waiting, that we're taking 4 weeks to prepare our hearts and our minds, and we are waiting for Christ to enter the world again and anew on Christmas Day. And so it's this whole season of looking ahead and anticipating and preparing ourselves for a particular moment. Obviously, we live this out in our culture in some really lovely ways too. Christmas season started after Halloween, and so the stores changed their decorations and lights gradually started to go up. And you began to receive, I got a catalog in the mail from Amazon. They still do that? Anyways, this idea of getting ready for the big holiday. But even my kids have started to notice that the lead up to Christmas is frankly even better than Christmas Day itself. Yes, children said this to me. And I tend to agree with them that it's the excitement and the anticipation that we make around the holiday that really makes it extra special. And so Advent is the church's way of playing into it. Actually, Advent is the original way of anticipating Christmas long before catalogs and Amazon and all of our buy culture. I should warn you that we're going to really get into this whole consumer mindset. And what you might guess is it doesn't really resonate with what our Christian faith is calling us to. But there's been some philosophers. Jacques Lacan is a French philosopher, and he writes about this idea of surplus enjoyment. And I'm not going to pretend to fully understand it because Lacan is famously really hard to read and understand. But I have a small grasp on this. This idea of surplus enjoyment is that there is something psychologically going on within us that appreciates not getting what we want. And we see this everywhere, actually. That think about it, the start of a relationship. Go back to high school days when you heard like, oh, so-and-so has a crush on you. And that was the original excitement, just knowing that this might possibly turn into a relationship. And then you start dating and then it all falls apart really quickly because you're actually terribly suited for each other. And you're wondering what in the world happened. It all seemed so perfect and movie quality early on. Yeah, that was the surplus enjoyment because you hadn't yet established the relationship. Similarly, it's the ways that social media really taps into our brain today as well. The endless scrolling as you continually look for that perfect post that's just going to summarize whatever chaotic thing is going on inside you at the moment. give you the perfect thing to laugh about. This is what we're constantly looking for. And it's not quite there yet, but there's still something enjoyable about continually seeking it out. Or it's just the anticipation of what's coming next. It's doing all of the planning and thinking and dreaming ahead about your upcoming vacation. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Just 2 weeks away. It's going to be like this. It's going to be like that. And then the vacation itself is just fine. But the real enjoyment was everything leading up to actually going on the trip. And there's other ways that this plays out too, in a negative sense for us, in that we will constantly describe what our life will eventually be like, and we'll take great pleasure in dreaming up, yes, once I finally get that promotion, then my life will be perfect. Or we'll talk all the time. It's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. And we dream in our heads of how wonderful it'll be to be a published author someday. But you never actually write the book because of surplus enjoyment. The pleasurable piece is in the fantasy of it. The pleasurable element is not actually having that idea yet in reality, because reality is always a little disappointing compared to how we dreamed it up in our heads. And so we love the waiting, the anticipation, the idea of what could be. And so is Advent playing into this in some ways? Well, yes and no. I think within our consumer culture, there's a lot that preys on the way that our human psychology embraces surplus enjoyment. It's why all the packaging has to be so polished and beautiful and enticing. The packaging itself that's hiding the Oreo cookies is what's the enjoyable part. And then you actually eat the cookies, like, these aren't even that good. Yeah, I said it. But it looks so much better based on the packaging. Don't judge a book by its cover, we always say, and yet we do it all the time because there's something within us that creates the vision that enjoys what could be. And so companies have learned this and know that they can sell more cookies or more books by putting really pretty pictures on the front and making the packaging itself highly appealing. And so, again, I ask the question, is Advent some sort of way of playing into this? I think Advent is the church's way of trying to redeem this inherent psychological flaw that lives within all of us. Advent invites us to see waiting as something holy, and anticipation as the opportunity to slow down and to reflect and to invite God in to this tumultuous part of our hearts that's always dreaming of a better possible world for ourselves. There's nothing wrong with hoping and dreaming for the future, but notice how misplaced that hope and dreaming often is in our highly consumer culture. And so Advent invites us to realign our priorities, to redeem this surplus enjoyment, and to simply wait in God's presence for God. I've talked before on this podcast about my commitment to the practice of centering prayer, which is just sitting in silence for 20 minutes, and how important that's been for me. It's retrained my brain and my heart in real ways, because the only thing I'm supposed to do in those 20 minutes is just simply be in God's presence. I'm not trying to pray through a decision. I'm not trying to name all of my anxieties before God. I'm just trying to open my heart and my mind to the very presence of God that is always with me, that is as close as the very next breath I take. And when you hear that, I'm guessing you think, wow, centering prayer sounds really boring. I think that's the point. I think that we are constantly wanting to be entertained and stimulated and have our imagination engaged. And there's so much in our world that plays into that exact current within us. And instead, what if we just took time to be in God's presence and to let this breath be more than enough for us? Furthermore, when we actually slow ourselves down enough to be bored and to experience the anxiety of that boredom, you will be amazed at what is finally able to bubble to the surface. What have you been hiding? What have you been avoiding? What have you been trying to move so quickly past that you don't have to look at it or admit it to yourself? When we sit in God's presence, we're suddenly able to bring those pieces to the surface and bring them before God. There's something deeply healing about allowing ourselves that time in that place to bring forward what we've been trying to avoid and to bring it, more importantly, into God's presence. And so I think in a lot of ways, Advent is a similar practice to centering prayer. Maybe people experience it as a little boring. Wait, what do you mean? We're just supposed to wait for 4 weeks? Can't we do something more than just wait around? But no, it's in the waiting, in the slowing down, that maybe we're finally able to see what God's been trying to help us uncover all along. There are stories throughout the Bible about periods in the wilderness, whether it's Jesus heading off to the wilderness for 40 days at the beginning of his ministry, or the Israelites wandering in the wilderness for 40 years after they've been freed. And it often feels like we just talk about these wilderness stories as just like, oh yeah, and then they were in the wilderness. And it doesn't seem like anything important. It's just sort of that in-between point from the real action and things getting started. But I think that these stories are shared within our scriptures because it's God's way of helping us realize that wilderness times are important, that we do sometimes just need space and time for the Spirit to work on us in new ways. It's often theorized that the Israelites had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years because God needed to bring them into a new way of being. They couldn't just go immediately from slavery to the promised land because they needed to reorient their entire mindset, their entire community, in order to then properly enter into that promised land as God's people. If it had happened too quickly, they would have carried with them too many of the old practices and assumptions and ways of belief that they had developed in Egypt. So they needed the wilderness to be that in-between space. And maybe we need the 4 weeks of Advent to allow us to receive God in a new way on Christmas. Christmas is a story of God entering our world, becoming incarnate among us. That is a powerful, overwhelming promise and truth for our lives today. And maybe we need 4 weeks to clear away the clutter, to slow down and ground ourselves in something deeper so that we can receive that promise in an entirely new way this year. I find it really ironic that the Christmas season in our cultural sense is one that is completely dominated by buying and getting more and hurrying about and going from this Christmas party to that Christmas concert to getting all of the shopping and cooking done and getting everything in order for your post-Christmas travel. It is so busy and it is so focused on just getting more and more. But I feel as if Advent is constantly trying to give us a counter narrative to all of that. It's the Advent season in church, not the Christmas season. And during Advent, we wait and we watch. We root ourselves and ground ourselves deeply and hopefully start to slow down. Yeah, maybe we get a little bored along the way too. But all of this is helping to redeem these psychological tendencies that we have within ourselves that constantly want the busy and want the more and want to do it all ourselves. can Advent be a time when we unlearn all of that so that we can just receive the gift of God's presence in an entirely new and healing way again on Christmas? There's some thoughts to start off our Advent season. I think I'm going to do a couple more of these. I've got more to say on Advent in different ways. Send and share with someone who's maybe being a little too busy this Advent season. I encourage you and those around you to slow down. Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be dreaming of what could be next or what could be possible. Just appreciate what's right now and rest in God's presence today. As always, thank you so much for listening and being a part of this ongoing conversation on the Together for Good podcast. And as we always say, stay in peace. Thank you for listening to the Together for Good podcast. If you'd like more resources for your walk of faith, please visit our website, bethany-denver.org, or download our mobile app by searching Bethany Connect in your phone's app store.